Yeah. There we go. And I somehow lost my phone, so Wyntis, would you go ahead and share and share and share and share?
I sure will.
We'll wait for 2 or 3 people to hop on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah. Sorry, we've had a very long day today.
Yeah, we are live sharing content.
Alrighty. Well, we've got a person. We got a eyeball.
AI. We're gonna get some more.
Oh yeah. Let me discuss. Do you want to go first?
No, you just tell me your show. I'm like, you're doing it.
Yes, ma'am. All right.
I mean, we can bounce back and forth.
That's what I
can do a
thought.
question. I can, you do one, I do one.
Okay.
That'd be great. So, if you can do the introductions and everything, I'm sharing.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to 810 News Media Group. This is Mr. Stephen Laffey. He's a GOP presidential candidate. He's also been mayor in what was the city again, sir?
Cranston, Rhode Island.
Yeah, Rhode Island's the state. So he's got experience in the municipal field, which here in Flint is more of our biggest focus. We're going to limit our crowd interaction today. We've been reached out to, and it was great respect to us, and we want to be sure that that is returned to the gentleman. And the best way to do that is to control the show.
Absolutely.
So I guess we're just going to jump right on into it. And I've got a gag question for you, then I got a real one. First off, Ford or Chevy?
Ford. I own three Fords.
Oh, found on road that, sir, this is a GM town.
I know. I'm so sorry. It's funny how that does split up, and people do. I have a friend in college, Roger Clement. They're total GM people, but my father owned Fords. And of course, in the show Hawaii Five-0, when I was a kid in the 60s, they only drove Fords. So I only really have had Fords. I did have a Suburban one time, but I own 2 Ford Expedition ELs Max, and I drive an F-250. 27 F-250. But they're made in America, as is my tie, as is my clothes, as is the belt. A lot of things I talk about making things in America. And I know there was a movie, the original Michael Moore movie, Made in Flint, which was a really good documentary. My documentary, Fixing America, is me traveling the country, not looking for the head of GM, but talking to individual people on the sides of roads about how to fix this great country. So I'm also a documentary filmmaker, but I'm sorry, I drive Fords. My father did so. I do.
You know what? Everyone has a flaw. My father-in-law is a certified GM master mechanic, but when I met his daughter, I was driving a Jeep. They set me straight pretty damn quick.
You can't drive that now. That's made by the Europeans, the Stellantis people or whatever. I'm joking, but they're still made. As long as they're made in America, almost all of my cars over my lifetime have been made in America, and my tires are made in America. I try to find. People need to look on the sides of their tires and see. They can buy a Michelin, but it could be made in Birmingham. It's not Flint, but we try to buy American in my family.
The UAW around here used to run around with stickers that said, "Still have a job? If so, keep buying foreign and see how long that lasts."
And I made a movie about it. We have to stop trading with China. I'm sorry, we're off topic on the gag issue. But anyway, keep going. I'm sorry.
No, so I went to your site, and yeah, as you were telling us before the show, there is a lot there. One of the things that really drew me to it, though, you've mentioned a lot that on other publications, other podcasts, as well as on your site, the impact of Social Security and the neglect it's had over the decades, and your plan to fix that as a purple plan. Could you explain that to us?
Yes. I think it's financially immoral and, quite frankly, immoral for people to keep saying on either side of the aisle that they're not going to touch it, or they're simply going to raise taxes, or they're going to raise the retirement age, but they don't know how. So I'm not an inventor. I am close friends with Larry Kotlikoff, my advisor for the campaign, the senior economics professor and the world-renowned expert on Social Security. So my plan is really his plan, but the plan goes like this. And first of all, we're talking about a $61 trillion problem, double the national debt. That's the amount of money we're going to be taking in versus what we're going to spend over the future. So if it's not fixed, the people 40 and under simply won't get it at all. And in fact, You take some successful young people who are 40, who are 30. If they're not, whatever, but they know that they're paying into it. But if they meet with a financial advisor, if they don't ever plan to get it, do they? No one
No,
plans to get it, right? So,
I'm 34. I know I'm not receiving a
right,
cent from that,
but
and I've been paying into it since I was
right.
19. And yeah,
And the reason you should vote for me is that I will fix it. My history of doing what I say I'm going to do, whether it's a third rail issue or not, is I actually do these things. And I think when I'm done, it'll be widely popular. So here's how it works. You're 62 and older, boom, you're getting what we told you. Don't tell me I'm taking money away from elderly. Don't say, you're going to get it. We're going to pay you. Whatever it says, we're going to pay you. Take the 20-year-old, 19 in your case. Let's just say the 20-year-old starts work the first year I take office. That person's in a totally different plan. He or she is not in a Social Security plan. They are putting aside 10% of their income, and it's invested in a worldwide basket of stocks and bonds and real estate and everything for 42 years. 42 years straight. You don't get to take it out. If you own it, so if you die, your heirs get it. If you get married at 30 and divorced at 40, I pray that you don't. I'm just giving you the situations.
Right.
You make more than your wife makes more than you, whatever it might be. You still split it while you're married. You're married. It goes together. You're putting in 10, she's putting in 12, you're putting in 11 each. So you divorce, you each keep your half. It's nothing to worry about. You just keep moving. You get to be 62, whatever age we can decide, 62. We start buying, for all the people who have survived, we start buying annuities or treasuries that are adjusted for inflation. So when you get to be, say, 70, everybody gets paid out in an annuity. There's no deficit. It's your account. You're okay for the rest of your life. And here's the thing. In 1983 at Bowdoin College, I wrote a paper about this for an economics class. And I was stunned at how little the returns were for Social Security recipients in 83 versus what they would have gotten in the private market. So now let's take the person that is 39. Let's take 40. Let's, to be easy, let's say it's someone who's 40. They've already worked 20 years. So they're going to get whatever the credit says they're going to get. If the letter you got from Social Security says blah, 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 you would get $1,800 a month starting at 62, let's say. They're going to get that.
Right.
They're also going to enter the new system, though. They're not going to be that system. So now they only have 22 years till they turn 62 in the new system. Is it possible for someone 47, 53 to get less? Everything goes south. It's possible. But here's the thing, folks. If we don't do this or something like it, we're going to break the country financially. The young people people my age and older have destroyed young people. We are the worst generation of we're not the best generation like the people came out of World War II. We're the worst generation. And think about the polls that you see today. 80% of Americans think we're heading in the wrong direction when unemployment is 3.5%. That's a statistic you've never seen. You've seen wrong direction, high unemployment, there's a recession. We're in the wrong direction. Really good growth under Bill Clinton, let's say. We're in the right direction. You've never, and so why do we see this number? We see it because people do care about the future. Even if they don't have kids, they care about their nieces. They care about the country. And they know that we've spent way too much money. So I think if we solve this Social Security problem, and that's one of the great problems of our $200 trillion of different debt we have, we put that to the side. And what happens over time, so just picture people, unfortunately, don't picture people dying. But what happens is people in the old system do pass away.
Yes, sir.
And then people in the new system, there's no actuarial, unfunded anything. It's what's there. So the person who's 20 undoubtedly, when they turn 62, will get 5 or 10 times the amount of money that they would have gotten under Social Security, even if it was properly managed. Because properly managed, and you guys don't look old enough to remember the lockbox. They got it in a lockbox.
I remember reading about it. Yeah, we will hold on to your money for you. Yes, we will add interest to it. And then someone decided to find the key to that lockbox and use it to fund everything else.
But Social Security's never been in a lockbox. It was another political lie. So So that's one of the 5 major things that I am running on that nobody else will even broach. In other words, it's not okay to find the good governor of Florida and he says, I'm not going to touch it. Although when he was a conservative congressman, he wanted to cut it. This isn't okay, folks.
No.
It's not okay for Donald Trump to say we're not going to touch it. It's just not. Listen, there's so many millions of people affected negatively by the fact that we're not touching it. There's so many people who are retiring that aren't getting what they could have gotten if they invested it privately. Now, the reason I say you can't touch it is that one of the great mistakes made in our 401k plans and because remember, we don't go back to GM. People worked at GM for 40 years. They got a gold watch, they got a pension, and they went to retirement. Great. People don't do that anymore. They keep leaving jobs now at 20. I can't stop that. But we can't have people just keep leaving jobs and take their money out of their 401k plan because they're 23, pay the penalty, which is almost nothing because they're 23, and then get to be 65 and have nothing. We can't have a country like that. So that's why I have this plan to fix Social Security, and I think it's the right plan, and it's the only plan, presidential candidate.
So hearing you talk about it, it reminds me of the thrift savings plan when I was in the Army. It's been replaced, but it was there are several different funds that you as a soldier or any service personnel could choose for a portion of your paycheck to go into. Man, she's throwing things at me. I don't want to blow the poor man's ears out.
I can't hear you. No.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. So a portion of your paycheck will go into it every paycheck. By the time you get out, however those funds have developed, you will get that money when you get out. And that's a lot of what your plan here is speaking to me. That's something I know. I've been in that. Whereas I've seen Social Security, I've been rather fiscally conservative since my early 20s. And I've seen I had no retirement unless I went out and got a very high paying job that came with a 401k.
Yes.
There was no Social Security for it.
No. I mean, some of the other things that have to be done is, I don't know if you know this, but about 8% of the people in our country don't pay into Social Security. They all should. Everybody has to be in. So there's things like that. But remember this, we're not letting Charles Schwab or JP Morgan touch the money with brokers. We're not doing that. We don't need that. No. It just goes into one giant computer. It gets invested regularly. And 42 years later, if you're still alive, we stop buying annuities. You get a lot more money. And there are people who might get less, but the people who are already retired will get the same as they were promised. So,
if you happen to pass, it does go on to your heir, your wife.
If you turn 40 and get hit by a car, your heirs will get it in a will. It doesn't go back to the government. It goes to whatever's in that account, goes to your children, your wife, whatever it might be.
Does this sound like politician? Politicians like to reach into my pocket and use me as a piggy bank. This don't sound like politician.
Yes, it does. He sounds very, very good like politician.
All right. What's your next question?
So, I got a question. I'm just a straight shooter. First of all, thank you for reaching out to A10 News Media Group. It's a pleasure having you on our platform. So I will just try to take it easy on you. I'm just lying. I've never taken it easy on anybody. But here's a question for you. I just want to jump right into it. Flint, Michigan. Murder capital of the world. I don't think we're number 2 now. 3 people were just killed right across the street from where we sit last week. 8 people killed in a mall on the other side of the United States last week. Shootings are everywhere, all across America. This is something that people do not like to talk about, but I would like to know your stance on gun control.
Yes, I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment. I would not keep people from owning guns. I myself own guns. Now, places like talk about places that were murder. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. It is not the murder capital of the world. But I lived in Memphis for 9 years. Can I tell you a little bit about Memphis?
Sure, sure.
Not. I've never been to Flint. I'm sorry. I know all about Flint and the problems with the water and the problems. I mean, I know from Michael Moore's movie. I know with the
And we are
devastation.
still in that crisis, sir.
Yes, and the movie that I made, Fixing America, which you could watch on Amazon still, that was a well-received documentary, goes through towns like, I'm not trying to compare Flint. I know there's a particular problem there,
Right.
but Memphis, Tennessee has a lots of crime. And we could talk about the breakup of the family from the 60s and so forth. But the real thing that I saw there that always saddens me is the education system. See, I taught first graders and fifth graders at the Caldwell School in Memphis, Tennessee in the 90s. And I brought over a bunch of Morgan Keegan. I worked for Morgan Keegan people to work. And the first graders I taught needs versus wants. And they were bright-eyed and bushy-tails, and they were willing to learn. And then in fifth grade, they weren't.
Right.
And I've always felt saddened by what's happening with our education system and the violence that we see and the kids not able to get out. Now, I didn't grow up in Flint. I grew up, my father was a toolmaker. I grew up sort of lower middle class. My oldest brother died of AIDS. My other brother, while I was mayor, tried to burn down the Institute of Mental Health, has been locked up for many years with mental problems.
Mm-hmm.
My other sister who's had schizophrenia, lived in a group home, has passed away. So there's lots and lots of problems in this country. And I think they're not going to be solved by two sides going at it. If I am a big constitutionalist in a sense, and so if people want to change the Constitution, have at it. Like, do it the appropriate way. For example, if I'm president, you won't see any executive orders. But directly to the issue of guns, and this may not be a popular position.
Right.
But back when we had a draft and people got out of school and they handled guns, we didn't have a lot of people talking about guns were bad, because guns by themselves aren't bad.
Right.
I mean, in Chicago, you can't own a gun. There's lots of violence. You know, we can do all these stories. The problem is in the hearts of these teenagers. I'm an evangelical Christian, so just so you know. So the hearts of these teenagers in cities that we as a country don't focus on. We don't go there. We don't talk to these people. We don't have. I was told when I ran for the U.S. Senate not to campaign in inner city Providence, Rhode Island. I said,
I've heard that before when I ran for state rep here. I was told Flint is just not the place.
I
tell you what.
I just want to interrupt you for a quick second, Mayor Laffey.
Yes.
Yesterday, I had on Brother LeRon X from the Flint chapter of the Minister LeRon X from the Flint chapter of the NOI, Nation of Islam. Okay. You're Republican, Nation of Islam. You can probably, in your mind, tell how far you guys are on some issues.
Yes.
But you are the first person that has ever repeated exactly what he said, being a black man in the urban community. He said it's about the mind and the heart. It's not the guns. The guns aren't the issue. It starts with the mind and the heart, and that starts at home. So I do want to commend you.
Yeah. Well, and it also goes right to it when you go to my page at stevelaffey.com. I know a lot about education. Not only did I grow up in a public school, but I have 6 children. So I've educated them in Montessori, Catholic, private. And I personally, when my 18-year-old daughter came down with stage 4 cancer in 2015, I stopped what I was doing, and I personally homeschooled the last 3. Now, I am blessed. I have assets. I can do this. People can't. I totally get it. What I'm saying is, from being a mayor and dealing with antagonistic school committees, to all the education I've done, I've also taught the top finance course at the State University in Rhode Island. So the very top course was taught by me. I understand education, and I'm just going to tell everybody something, another thing that people may not want to hear. You may think that you missed the last 20 years of PTA meetings for public schools. They didn't have them. The public schools cannot be fixed. When I'm on a show and someone says to me, and by the way, this is in Colorado, a little more upscale than Flint, Michigan. telling
I
you
was
that.
stationed there for a few years. I know what you're talking about.
And so, not perfect, but they'll say things like, Steve, that they're trying to put another, they call it a resource officer, they say policeman in a school.
Hmm.
And I say to them something they haven't thought about. Wait a second. If you have a policeman in your school, didn't something go so radically wrong with the community, with what's happening? Something went so wrong. Why don't we fix that and not talk about putting another police officer? How do we fix that, Steve? We've got to get every single kid in this country a better education. Let me explain how. Right now, and I don't know what Flint, Michigan is, but I know Denver, Colorado is $23,000 a kid. And I know they have extremely low test scores. And I know the nation has terrible history scores. 13% of eighth graders are proficient, which means, not to make fun of Flint, that the number in Flint is probably lower than 13% who are proficient in history or math.
10% math, 10% literacy.
Mhm.
So this is what has to change in our country. This is what I want to do if I'm president. I am little Steve Laffey, who got my opportunity to do what I wanted to do because of public schools that don't exist anymore. We can't keep saying they could exist. We can fix them. We can't keep having secretaries of education at the national level do nothing but talk. We,
Right.
Yeah.
we've got to
Absolutely.
get a check to every single kid in this country, especially Flint, Michigan, especially Memphis, Providence, New Orleans, to get every single kid out of the public schools, out, so that the parents can decide where they go. I don't care. By the way, as I tell people, I don't care where they go. Could it get any worse than what goes on in public schools, than what I see, than what I know? It couldn't get any worse. Let me tell you another thing. How do we know the federal government doesn't care at all about your children? We know because it's 2023. There's something called the internet, and they could, at the federal level, put the best Algebra 1 teacher to pick one subject that's not woke or unwoke, it's just numbers. You have to decide whether you read Catcher in the Rye or not. They could put the best math teacher at every grade with 15-minute to 15-minute videos. So if your daughter or son missed an episode, was sick, whatever happened, they could go there and watch it and catch up. Because if there's one subject you cannot fall behind on and generally can't be successful if you fail, it's math,
Yeah.
right?
What about reading? We got kids that are graduating reading at
You
fourth
can
grade
you can
reading level.
you can even do some things without reading. But and I totally agree with you. I'm not arguing, but think about
Right.
it. That would actually be free. So most of all this education in grade school could be free. So when you pay your property taxes in Flint, Michigan, think about it for a second. Don't think any longer, well, my teacher is good, but the rest of them stink. That's what people say about their congressman. My congressman came back home. I love him. The rest of them should be fired. No. And by the way, there are still some great teachers. There's some great administrators.
Right.
But the system has gotten like so convoluted, it cannot be fixed. And I'm running for president because I know more about education than anybody running. And I will actually make sure that we move kids out in ever increasing numbers, especially in our inner cities, so they have a chance to be me. I mean, I'm not the most successful person in the world,
Right.
but I know what it's like to come from not the poorest family. We had food, but we struggled, my family, and we had a lot of issues. So I get it. And I was so blessed that I only applied to one college. I didn't even pay to go there, folks. So there was I had no money. And so
So if I get this right, you are. I think I heard this from who was that? Betsy the Boss, like for the privatization of well, to dissolve the public schools and give each family a voucher for them to pick the school that they want to go to.
School
it need
choice.
it
School choice.
needs to be a national movement. There are things that can be fixed, like Social Security.
Right.
There are things like the Federal Reserve and money we can fix relatively easily. But the public schools no longer, they're living, it's not Little House on the Prairie rerun from the 1800s, folks. Something went radically wrong. First, they took prayer out of the school in 62,
Yes.
and then the family started to break up. All these things work together as a negative. but they can't be fixed. Parents need to make decisions. We need to get them a check, and we'll save a lot of money and get better education. There's very few things that have giant, what I call margins in business, where things can be cheaper and better. So anybody walking into a Walmart would say, wow, this is cheaper than over at CVS because they sell more. I'll get it here. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's cheaper. Once in a while, you find better and cheaper. I wouldn't say that about Ford versus GM. We'll call them tied.
Right.
Just for the sake of talking to Flint. But there are times when things can be cheaper and better, and that is like education. It could be much cheaper and much better. We just have to have a country that focuses on it. Let's focus on the children once, just once, just one,
Just once.
just
Just once.
and we can fix this thing. And then a kid named Steve Laffey in Flint, whatever his name really is today, he could go to college.
Right.
Right.
So before I flip it back to you,
Yeah.
just one more thing I want to sneak in. I do have a question here. You mentioned Social Security. A lot of our audience,
We do have old folks.
can he hear us? Because he's still talking. Or am I just behind?
Um,
I want to make sure.
you know what? I'm gonna go hit the computer since our best producer in the world keeps walking out.
Hold on just a second, mister.
Take your time.
Okay.
There we go.
All right.
Making sure. All right. So, all right. Hit him with it, Wyntis.
Okay, so here is my question. If I can find it again. I'm sorry.
Is it the one from Daryl?
Just got thrown off. Yeah, so question. The way Social Security is designed today, you can get Social Security at 62, but not full Social Security until you turn 67 or work till you are 70, which, in my opinion, the Social Security is banking on by the time you are eligible, you would be dead. So, what's your thoughts on that?
On whether you should take it or early or late.
Well,
Is that the
I
question?
think
do
it's
you think
more
like
of
it's
the.
it's like why do you have to wait so long to get it? And it's like America is banking on, you know, people being dead by the time they're eligible.
Well, we started Social Security where 15 people were working and one person was going to be retired. And President Roosevelt said it was just a temporary thing. But it's
Right.
part of our community now, and too many elderly people depend upon it as their only source. So the reason that you wait all this time is that most people used, by the way, most people used to retire younger because people didn't live to be 73.
Right.
Although we are going through a period in America where the actual age of our population living a little bit less longer for the first time we think in our history. But that's
Yeah,
another
our
matter.
life expectancy's
Yeah.
gone down, and our expected IQ is going down as well.
Yeah, these things are tragic, but we can reverse those too. But the reason that you wait till 62 is that most people live to be 65. Now, even just moving up the retirement age doesn't solve the problem. My program solves the problem because think about it. 30 years go by and the only people really left are people who own their own thing. They get what they put in, they stay alive, etc. But the reason that we do it that way is simply that it takes a long time to build up those kind of assets so that you actually can retire. That's why.
Okay.
Okay.
My turn?
Your turn.
All right. So I did a little bit of research last night, and you seem to be a numbers guy.
I am.
A fellow numbers guy. It's nice to see. So as of last night, 12:31 Eastern Standard Time, the national debt was at 31,458,361,000 or million $159,451. This came out for each individual American to be $94,108.
Yeah.
Now, let's put this in perspective. Your typical unmarried E4 in the military with 3 years of experience. That's going to take him or her 5 years to pay off. Or your typical Flint school teacher making about $32,000 a year, about 4 years to pay off if the number doesn't go up.
What? 40 years to pay off 94,000.
If you don't buy yourself groceries, if you don't do bills, I mean, if you put everything,
Okay.
if you starve yourself.
Right.
So what is your plan to lower our national debt, or at least slow it down? Because if you
Yeah.
go to nationaldebttracker.com, those
Yeah.
numbers are flying up constantly,
Yeah.
and it is an accurate count. There is not a second that that screen sits still.
No, never. And so just to backtrack, to give you a specific answer, things really fell out of control after Bill Clinton. Under the Bush administration, a Republican, he ran up, and again, when I say he, under those 8 years, we ran up $6.1 trillion of debt, and we have little to show for it. Barack Obama came in, and after 8 years of presidency, he ran up $8 trillion of debt. Again, not him personally, but part of the administration, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And then comes along Donald Trump in my party, the Republican Party, who announces to the Washington Post in April of 2016 that not only is he going to balance the budget, he's going to pay off all the interest on the debt, which was bizarre. I mean, but see, we live in a world where people say whatever they want. That would have been in 1980 a disqualifying comment, but it helped him get elected in 2016. So he runs up $8 trillion in 4 years, double the rate of Barack Obama, a man who he made fun of all the time, anytime he could. So this is the real problem. If we had all this debt and you could drive from Flint, Michigan to my house on the most beautiful roads, and everybody had Wi-Fi throughout the country, right? And we had a 700 ship navy again. We weren't worried about China instead of 275 ships, right? Including
and clean water.
and we had clean water, and plastics weren't a problem. And then we'd be like, okay, but we have nothing to show for it. So to directly answer your question, we're going to have to do something along and more stringent than what Switzerland did about 20 years ago. It's called the Swiss debt, DEBT break, and it makes a lot of sense. They had debt to GDP, gross domestic product, of 24%, and they didn't want it to be anymore. We're at 108%, by the way. So so what they did was put in a law that says the federal government cannot take in more revenue than the GDP, the gross domestic product of our country, grows. And in fact, over a business cycle, they have to balance the budget. So they wake up 20 years later, and their debt to GDP is 24%. Now, we're over 100%, where usually things totally break down, like if you're in Greece or Spain or another country like Venezuela. The reason we haven't broken down is that about 60% of all transactions in the world are done in US dollars, and we are the world reserve currency. That is a total blessing that we have abused. So we can only abuse it so long, and we're near the end of that. So we need something like that, but a little bit more stringent, where we will start paying down the debt faster than the GDP grows. And so why is this so important for anybody who's younger or wants a job to hear this kind of number game? Let me tell you why it's important. Think about yourself, not you two, but think about yourself if you have too much debt personally. You lie in bed at night, you don't know how to pay the bills, you took on a bigger mortgage, you've got a bigger car than you need, or whatever it might be going on, you lost your job, you have too much debt. You can't think clearly. You just can't.
Right.
The nation is not thinking clearly with too much debt. So we can't get it all down tomorrow. The Republican plan that they put forth about the debt limit is not a terrible plan, but the Democrats don't want to do it. But of course, when Republicans are in power, the Democrats do want to do it. It's whoever's in power doesn't. The whole thing goes back and forth. The same people who didn't want to raise the debt limit, like Mike Pence when he was a congressman, wanted to raise it when he was vice president. You have just a bunch of politicians who care very little about the future of the country. I hate. I'm not trying to make fun of them, but if you cared about the future of the country, we would try to make sure that, one, we always remain the world's reserve currency. Why? We can always borrow at lower rates because other people have to use dollars. They have to get dollars. And when the demand for dollars is strong, everybody listening to the show, benefits a little bit than if we live in Venezuela, where they only let you use US dollars to borrow because they don't trust the Venezuelan economy, country, people who run it. So it's extraordinarily important that we keep this. So my plan is just that, to stop bringing the debt down every year, but don't say crazy things that we're going to balance the budget next year. We will balance it very, very quickly if we stop spending. Now, why is that so important? If the dollar is stronger or the dollar is weaker, here's why. We want investment in Flint, Michigan. We want new factories in Youngstown, Ohio. All these devastated towns. I filmed in Youngstown, Ohio. I'm sorry I didn't come to your place to film my movie Fixing America. But let's say we're in Japan. All three of us. We have a great company. We speak Japanese, and we have a 15% investment return for our investors, we think. But I say to you two, hey, you know what? Let's open up in Flint, Michigan.
Right.
That US dollar, that Laffy guy, he's got his act together. They're starting to balance their budget. The dollar's going up versus the Japanese yen. It's going to go up, I think, at 3% per year. If we open up in Flint, Michigan, and we stay there for 10 years, we'll make an extra 3% per year just on the currency. We'll have an 18% return. That's long-term thinking versus the short-termism that dominates our politicians. That's when we'll bring the jobs back home. And I want to bring them home from China anyway on a whole nother topic. But that's why it's so critical, because to be technical about it, our gross domestic product, to be numbers person, is G, the government spending, which we don't need any more of. I, investment, which no one ever talks about, but we desperately need investment in Flint, right? We desperately need new manufacturing jobs.
Yes.
And by the way, it's going to happen anyway. China's going to collapse. Let's lead the transition back to America with pharmaceutical drug manufacturing, auto manufacturing, ball bearing manufacturing, anything manufacturing, because one thing true about manufacturing and why Flint was so devastated, there's something in economics called a multiplier effect. And the biggest multiplier effect in a job is a manufacturing job. One additional manufacturing job in Flint is 4 jobs. 100 new jobs in a factory is 400 jobs. And people say, what do you mean, Steve? I mean, the guy who comes at lunchtime and tries to sell you coffee is a job, right? When you open up the plant to build a car, you need someone to send you a carburetor. You need, we better open a carburetor plant. Oh, wait a second. We need to have batteries built over there. Hey, wait a second. It's 4 jobs, not 1. That's why manufacturing jobs are critical. And why, by the way, why did the elected officials say, oh, don't worry about that? Well, for a while, due to globalization, things were cheaper, but they're not anymore when the supply chain goes away. But it's going away forever. So let's bring these jobs back. This is what I wanted. This is the part about China on my website, right? Bring the jobs back to America, to Americans, and really increase our net wealth over the next 10 to 20 years. It'll take time, but we can do it.
Well, I'm glad you walked into that, because that was one of my questions on the list. We talk about inflation. Everything is going up. Groceries is going up. Gas is going up. I mean, you name it, it's going up. But the only thing that's not going up is our paychecks. So this is like a two-sided question, because we talked about education earlier. We're talking about wages now. So where are you at with raising minimum wage to $15? And also on the flip side of that, the standard for teachers' pay here in Flint is $38,000. They can't make it. They're struggling. The urban communities, like you said, like the public school system is just failing. So, first question, how do you feel about raising the minimum wage to $15? Second question, do you think it should be a national standard for teachers' pay?
I don't think we should bother with the minimum wage anymore. The minimum wage was designed a long time ago when people were stuck in certain areas, like, say, Altoona, Pennsylvania, even before Flint became a manufacturer, where people were stuck in Pennsylvania in mines and so forth. And there was monopsony power, by meaning one employer, no one could leave. There were no cars to leave back in the day, right? So unions grew in their proper role back in the day. Right now, you can almost not find people worried about the minimum wage because inflation is the real problem, and people are. But the wages are not going up. Inflation was 8, wages went up at 4. By the way, this is what I just want you to know, people listening. This is what your politicians, combined with the Fed Reserve, do to people on purpose. You may have read in 2020 that no one thought there'd be inflation. Then you would have read in 2021 that inflation was transitory. Like it was just going to be around for a little bit. All of it, you can watch me on radio, you can watch me on shows like this saying that's a lie. Inflation comes from money, too much money being printed. The Fed Reserve raised the money supply 20% and said there wouldn't be inflation. Now, there's also about the velocity of money. I won't bore you. But they knew there would be inflation. And so the real thing that destroys middle class families is inflation. Why? Because if you make $1 million a year and you bought a bigger home than the middle class and your energy costs went up $5,000 last year, you don't care. If you make $65,000 and your energy costs went up $4,000 from a smaller home, you really care. You can't take a vacation. You can't paint your home. In that film about Flint, Michigan, made years ago, it's not that people didn't want to paint their home. It's not that people didn't want to mow their lawn. It's not that people didn't care about their neighborhood. They didn't have a job. But the more insidious way that it happens, that was a direct way of losing jobs, right? They took the jobs away. Boom, gone. The more insidious way that they're going to do this to everybody listening to the show, the Federal Reserve and your elected officials, is they will run inflation higher than your wage growth, and they will steal it from you slowly. As I tell people, even if inflation went to zero tomorrow, they don't give you back the $4,000 in energy costs they took from you from 2 years. They don't give it back to you. That's $8,000 in energy costs. They may have sent you a check in the mail for $2,400. You lose. Right. So by the way, my position on schools is very simple. Local schools should be run by local people. The state really shouldn't be involved. But at another level, I want all the kids out. I think
teachers pay. What about the teachers pay?
I wouldn't get, as a president, I wouldn't get involved in teachers pay. I know there's a great disparity as we sit here today in many areas of the country between teachers pay in public schools. I don't know whether in Flint, Michigan, it's high or low or whatever it might be, but I wouldn't be in a position as president to dictate that. What I would be in a position to do as a cheerleader, much like John F. Kennedy did about the Presidential Physical Fitness Award. You might not even remember this, but he started this Presidential Physical Fitness Award. He was a cheerleader for fitness. And when I became 8 years old in 1970, unfortunately, he and his brother had passed away. But we all knew about this, and we were all involved. That's all going away. But a president can be a cheerleader on these issues and affect real change, especially when it comes to public schools. So that's what I would be involved in. But I don't know enough about the public school pay of Flint, Michigan today to say it's low or high. I'm sure it's low. I'm sure it's low because your tax base has been so devastated. Right. I mean, so again, everything. Here's one thing to think about. Everything I've said to you so far is actually connected. When schools went downhill and kids weren't learning 30 years ago, and they didn't learn about how inflation and money was from the Federal Reserve like I did, and then the jobs got taken away to China, it's the cycle of death. Think of the movie The Lion King, the cycle of life, the giant, right? And think of the opposite. It started with kids not knowing enough. They get out of school, they can't make change. Right? It went to the fact that they didn't understand money. So the politicians say, oh, these people won't understand what we're doing. We'll run inflation up. We don't care. They won't know. It'll be slow. Now, right. And then it went to China, where these giant corporations became Chinese companies. So, by the way, my movie is all about this. China cannot lobby tomorrow morning. Think about it. A communist country that's dead set on destroying America. We have a $400 billion trade deficit with them every year now. $400 billion. So those jobs that should be in Flint, that should be in Youngstown, are in China. And the CEO of Walmart loves it. And the CEO of John Deere loves it. Because their short-term profits at the expense of the long-term wealth of our country, and, by the way, the long-term health of their own company, because China will eventually take them over. But for the short,
they can afford to move. I'm stuck here.
No, you're exactly right. And we've all allowed it. There was never a worse decision made than allowing communist China to join the World Trade Organization in 2000. That led to devastation, even more so than what was happening in Flint. It led to the devastation of a lot of these towns throughout America. again, with a multiplier of -4. So when they close one plant in Flint and lay off 1,000 people, they laid off 4,000 people. If they lay off 10,000 people, it's 40,000 people without jobs within a year because the guy doesn't show up to sell you a Coke.
Right.
They don't
Yep.
make the ball bearing that they need for your factory. So that's what we have to stop. And if we do this, by the way, we will have a lot less problems. What I'm talking about is not easy things to talk about. I just have a gift
10 seconds.
to know how
Almost
to
had
do
to say that. I'm a moderator. 10 seconds.
No, no, you make a lot of sense there. And piggybacking off of you, what we get from some of these other countries that these industry jobs have moved to are also inferior products that you have to replace sooner.
That's right.
But I just wanted to throw that out there so people also get that side of it.
Yeah, I do videos about buying stuff made in America, like the All American Clothing Company, where I buy my jeans. They last 3 times longer. My New Balance shoes are made in Massachusetts. They cost more. They last longer. This tie is made in Vermont. So
Yeah, you probably won't need another one for a little bit. That one's not going to bleed in the wash.
What's the next question?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
All right, so with the U.S. tax code being 2,652 pages long, it creates a legal maze for citizens and businesses to wander through. Do you have any plans to push Congress to simplify it to be easier to understand and cut out many of the special loopholes for niche businesses and industries?
Yeah, cut them all out. My plan at stevelaffey.com, I took from a person who became a friend of mine named Herman Cain, who ran for president in 2011. I met him in 2013, and we, or 12, 13, we became friends. He helped me out when I ran for Congress. Wonderful, wonderful man, Herman Cain, from educated at Masters in Math from Memphis, was the CEO of Godfather Pizza. The 999 plan is what we have to move to.
Okay.
And it became a very famous thing in 2011. And Herman Cain became a very hot commodity running for president. And then, of course, they couldn't have a Herman Cain become president, so they tried to take him out with allegations and so forth. But he was a really good. He went to heaven. He's a really good guy. But the 999 plan is the only thing we can do that is simple, fair, slightly progressive, and capture money from rich people as a wealth tax. So, for example, right now, a guy who wants to buy $100 million boat just buys the boat. He may pay a sales tax, but we need a 9% national sales tax on that boat to collect another $9 million for us. We need, when people pay income, for them to pay 9% with really no deductions. So we need a corporate tax of 9% with really no deductions. It's the tax code that the rich really love and the elite love because they don't get to pay taxes.
Right.
They put it onto the, by the way, they really put the tax code into the upper middle class.
Yeah.
Whereas the poor people don't pay the much in federal taxes. Of course, they get hosed at Social Security. They pay their whole life. They end up with nothing. That's a whole, we just talked about that.
Right.
So there's
Rich
only
rich.
one. So in this tax code that we have, that all the price supports, all the stuff for the farmers, all the stuff for the oil companies, it all goes away. It's the only way to raise a lot more money, because think about it. I say this in sort of jokingly, but if you're an illegal alien and you wander in and buy some bubble gum, we're going to get 9%.
Right.
All right. So if you're working under the table, which, by the way, I think about 20% of our economy is in tax avoidance mode. I don't even blame them. Right. A bartender at night. So we've got to capture more money. But the reason people loved Herman Cain's 999 plan was that, one, they hate the IRS. It kind of does away with it. They love simplicity. And people, by the way, people in America are fair. The reason that people get so upset is they don't think it's fair. In other words, they don't want the changes to the tax code because they say that rich guy's not going to pay, and they're right. But even if they paid more, which they don't necessarily have to do in the 999 plan, as long as everybody was doing it like a football coach saying, we're all in, right? If everybody's in, most people are okay, even if next year they pay a little more. They're like, that sounds fair. Okay. If Joe, the reason I became a popular mayor was after we had a bankrupt, about to declare bankruptcy.
It sounds like fun.
37 days to make payroll. I had to
Right.
raise taxes, made everybody angry. I had to cut spending. 1,200 people came into a room to watch me cut spending. A room only held 800 people. I have a videotape of this. But after I made them watch for 45 minutes, me cut from the top to the bottom, go after the public sector unions that were very egregious on certain things. But once they started seeing me cut everything, even square dancing at the senior center for like $1,000. I mean this seriously. Once they saw that I was going to punish everybody for the past administration's overspending, people started clapping. They were paying more in taxes, getting less services, and the meeting ends with people clapping and going, all right, let's go. One, they knew it was fair. Two, everybody got affected. Three, the problem would be solved. We wouldn't be bankrupt.
Right.
They were in. I was reelected as a conservative evangelical Christian Republican in the most democratic state by the widest margins in Cranston's history.
Wow, I gotta look this guy up some more.
Yeah.
So,
So, do
okay,
you know,
it's
real
my
quick?
turn.
Well, let me follow up.
Okay.
Do you know how much the average American pays in taxes, going from city sales, state income, all of that? What percentage of their income they end up paying, assuming everything is above board?
You're talking about on average for the person on average?
On average.
That I don't
We're
have in front of me, but I would say it's in the 20 to 30%, maybe more.
Honestly, you're looking at about 40%, sir.
Yeah.
So when you go 999, okay, I can live with that because, I mean, obviously it's different values at different places. I still have more money in my wallet to take care of my family
Right.
at the end of 999 rather than 40 flat.
Yeah.
And that just goes up and higher. All right. Ms.
Yeah.
Wyntis.
By the way, it brings up another incredible question that you didn't ask, but I just want to quickly answer. To get people out of poverty in America, people who are on welfare, the marginal tax rates for people to get out of poverty sometimes rise as high as 80 to 90%. It's one of the reasons people don't get out of poverty. We have to end that. So if you make very little money and you're on welfare, whatever it might be, when you want to, people could be there. Most people are there temporarily, by the way. This whole thing about the welfare queen being there forever but is really not true in American society. People don't want to be poor, but we have to lower the taxes for people getting out of poverty. So when they go to from making 10 grand to 20 grand, just to make up a number, they don't pay $5,000 extra in taxes. They pay
That extra tax
Because they're
bracket.
not seeing
Well,
that.
well we have to give people those
Right.
incentives to get out of poverty.
Absolutely.
If they say, listen, I'm making 10 grand, I got all these things coming in for subsidies, I can go make 30, but I'll pay $1,800, not 10 grand more. They'll do it. But a lot of
And you know
people
what? That's right. You're right, because a lot of people have no incentive to get off assistance because they can sit home and get more with their EBT cash assistance and the EBT free money, and just they get free health care. And it's like, I'm working, busting my ass every day, and I don't get anything.
I mean, yeah, when I was working Amazon as a security guard, there was a 2-month stretch where I thought my paycheck was going to be pretty nice. I was putting in 80 hours a week. We were down 2 guards. I went up a tax bracket and only gained a marginal amount.
Yeah.
I didn't actually gain anything. I lost money because of, I was driving an hour to work, and then I needed to feed myself, and then I needed to stay awake on a double.
Right.
So, I have a crippling addiction to energy drinks.
It's like the more you work, the more you pay in taxes. So that's like at my job now. We can hardly find anybody to work overtime because why work it when it's going to get taken away from you?
Yeah, I mean, unless it's one of those, I want to work to help my coworkers, but it's not actually benefiting me.
And that's why people don't do it. We need to change the system so that people move up the economic ladder, aren't penalized with high marginal rates. And we've got to make sure that wealthy people, when they buy things, it's the way to capture some of their wealth. I try to tell this to Democrats who want to do wealth. You're not going to do a wealth tax like Joe Biden. It's just not going to happen. I try to deal in reality. But all these things we're talking about work
Hey,
together.
leave Joel alone.
No,
He's waking up.
no, you're right. Let's be honest here. If I'm told there's going to be a wealth tax, I'm immigrating the hell away if I'm rich.
Of course.
Or I'm putting my money in places that don't send financial reports to the United States on request. Caymans, Switzerland, just to name the big names, but hell, there's third world countries in, say, South America that don't do it either.
Yeah.
That I will hide my money in.
Yeah. With a 999 system, you'll find ultra wealthy people moving to America, building plants, spending money, buying boats. People in America don't mind people being wealthy. They don't.
Right.
No,
But they
I'm
want
not going to knock
everybody to
someone
be
down
fair.
for their success.
Yeah, I'm hoping for everybody to be successful.
I do have a couple more questions.
Yeah,
just,
I'm
just
sorry.
a couple more. Just 2 questions. I'm gonna do one at a time. I just want to do them back to back for
Okay.
special reasons.
Oh, so
So, Mayor Laffey,
Yes.
do you like George Santos?
No, do I like him?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I think it's been a really sad situation in my Republican Party to know all the way along that a man was committing fraud and would eventually go to jail, and still he's running and he gets elected. And it strikes me as something that the Speaker of the House, McCarthy, put him on some committees, and I put out a statement saying, this is bizarre. It's fairly obvious that Mr. Santos has made up a lot of stuff that's going to get him in real trouble. And here he goes. He's been indicted on a number of charges that will always come.
Indicted?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he has. Well,
Yeah, he's
Trevor,
gonna
would
go to-
you like to tell Mayor Laffey about our Mayor Laffey?
No.
Mayor
Well,
I'll tell him.
Mayor
the man is a laughing stock. He is
Mayor
not a you.
Santos.
But let me let me say the words for you, because you're running for president and no one needs the sound clip of you saying it. It was a shit show, sir.
Oh, in Flint?
No,
Yes,
Santos,
in
but
Yeah.
yes, Flint.
Yes, in Flint.
Santos was definitely a shit show.
Yeah,
But
it was.
no one needs to clip you saying that.
We have
Oh.
we have Mayor Sheldon Neely here, who has lied since the beginning of his political career, stating that he had a bachelor's degree from Saginaw Valley State University. He has been on TV shows introduced as having a degree from Saginaw Valley State University, never corrected it. And once it was found out that he only did 1 semester at Saginaw Valley State University, he moved. He said that it was a error on his staffer's behalf, and nothing happened.
See, it's just, I don't know the situation, but this happens.
That's
a
it.
lot.
That's it. That's the situation.
No, it
Well,
happens.
you
a
said
lot.
it earlier, right? You said we've come into the age of politics where you can say whatever you want and nothing happens.
Yeah.
In this case, going with Santos himself, something did happen, thankfully, because that man was a stain on not just the Republican Party, but on American politics as a
Yes,
whole,
yes.
and onto his
Well,
community.
what about our stain on the city of Flint?
That comes up a bit later.
Okay. All right. Well, one more question for you. I'll let Trevor, because Trevor really prepared for this. So I just
Oh,
want
yeah,
to
I
give
got excited.
one more question. Something that's really big in the world right now. It's a hot topic, not only for women, black women, all women. Abortion rights. Women's rights to choose. It's my body, my right. What do you think?
Yeah, I disagree with that. I'm an evangelical Christian, and I had hoped and prayed that Roe versus Wade would be overturned. It was. I think the best thing for our country today is leave it to the states, like it was supposed to be left to the states. I am not for abortion. I know that many people go through these very difficult situations, especially in inner cities, it seems like. And of course, people would say to me, well, why don't you, adopt these kids and this and that? I have 6 children. I know the wonders of birth. I am just really traditionally pro-life. I've never changed my stance on it.
I can't get on you for that. Like I'm saying, you're a presidential candidate. We're just asking the questions.
Yeah, that is pertinent to half the country.
Right.
I do think that that when nowadays, like, you hear people say, well, if I become president, I'll pass the most conservative national federal ban on abortion.
Right. Right.
I don't think that's the way to handle it. Again, I hate to say it this way, but every life from beginning conception to the end should be protected the best we can. One of the reasons I try to get people to understand this that's not religious is that there's a lot more safety in the three of us staying alive if we try to protect every life. See, we're sort of in the middle here. We've been alive for a while. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 61. So it behooves us as a country and as a world to rejoice that we, because I know they're talking about in the same tone assisted suicide. I don't believe in it. I think that once you take a life and make it not a life, that it's something like in a woman's womb or it's part of her, I think you diminish. And again, I can say this secularly, although I believe it religiously, right? In the womb that I knew you. But what I'm saying is that if we do protect life this way, we do a better job of having human rights and defending human rights, whether I'm talking about communist China, which I don't want to trade with at all, which I've said publicly since 2005, that we shouldn't trade with them at all. We have a better job of protecting the Uyghurs who are in concentration camps in that country if we ourselves protect every life we can.
What about the situation, sir, where someone gets a woman gets raped and
Yes.
by her father?
So in the case of, you mentioned rape and incest at the same time, which is a terrifically horrible situation.
Mm-hmm.
I've always said that in those cases, now, when a woman goes to the police and files a report,
Absolutely.
then people say, well, people who are really stringent on this say, well, Steve Laffey, then that's not a Christian standpoint. And I tell them this. I can only tell people publicly what I can tell my daughters to their face. I couldn't tell my daughter it hasn't happened.
Right, thank God. Yes.
That I couldn't tell my daughter if she was attacked, raped, and went to the police that she would have to have that baby. I couldn't tell her that. So maybe that makes me bad or good or whatever, but I can't tell the nation something that I can't tell my daughter.
Thank you for being honest.
That's an honest answer.
Thank you for being honest.
I mean, so.
But the other part is this.
He's like, I'm not done yet.
Yeah, that's fine.
People, there was an abortion clinic next to the Catholic Church while I was mayor. And a man stood outside with these giant signs of aborted fetuses. And he stood there day after day after day. And people who were pro-life came to me, said, Mayor, could you talk to this guy? Because my daughter's going by on the way to school every day and seeing these horrific things. She's only 8 years old. She shouldn't. And I actually did. I went and talked to the guy. I couldn't do anything about it. I said, I'm pro-life with you. I don't think you should. I don't think you're succeeding and stopping abortions with these signs. Now, he didn't listen to me in a sense, but it doesn't mean I did the wrong thing to talk to him, because in people's hearts, by the way, I'll tell you one thing as mayor, with federal money, I can say it now because it's past the statute of limitations, we were able to get a sonogram for a pro-life place in Cranston. And we find that when men come in and see the sonogram of the baby, the little baby heart beating and whatever, they're much less likely to have an abortion. So I think that's a good thing.
Right.
I think we just do the best we can. There's a lot of terrible things going on in the world. More children isn't one of them.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Go ahead and share some of my questions, because just hearing me talk, it's going to bore folks.
No, it's not going to bore people, because you guys, you put a lot of work into this. So I want you to get your questions out there.
All right. So my next question comes in like this. Insurance rates have been on the rise nationwide for auto and homeowners, but also businesses. This happens to keep people from buying homes, obviously, or legally operating their vehicles. Secondly, but just as important, is the inability to insure a new business, especially a small business, with costs going up and crime rate rising nationwide. How would you help bring these insurance costs down?
Well,
if anything.
Yeah, there's a myriad of things in that question, and I may only hit on a couple of them.
That's fine. I mean, anything is something.
But but I just say this as a mayor. When this gets at cost levels. I really admired Rudy Giuliani before he worked for Donald Trump, and I got to know Rudy Giuliani because what he did in New York City was fantastic. I lived in New York City before he was mayor. It was crime-ridden. Insurance rates, car insurance rates were through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
He came in and really helped straighten that place out. And I took a lot of what he talked about, he did, because I lived and watched him do it, into Cranston. So, for example, in the city of Cranston, if you left one of those signs, I'm talking small stuff, by the way. If you left one of those signs that says, "We buy your homes on a city lot," or somewhere where we had a truck pick it up and throw it out. No, if
You
you
mean no blame?
now if you
believe it.
now listen, these are little things. It's called the broken window theory. It means that, like in Flint, Michigan, if someone breaks a window and no one fixes it, someone says, "I'm not going to mow my grass," and things spin out of control over the years, which is what happened in some of these cities.
Does this sound familiar?
Yes, very
Yes.
much.
So, for example, if you did graffiti in Cranston, I hate graffiti. It's like my pet peeve in life.
Oh,
I hate
welcome to
graffiti.
Flint.
So we caught graffiti people. I'll give you one example. I had police sit in bushes. Somebody had graffitied the back of a private wall. I went to the owner off a bike path and said, "Listen, I can't touch you. I'm a mayor. Can you just whitewash it one more time?" He's like, "Mayor, I did this 5 times." I said, "Just do it one more time, please." Okay. He whitewashes it. I have cops in the bushes. Takes 3 nights. Professional graffiti people come out. They got the stuff. They're like druids. They got this long hair. Everything's black. They're getting out because they got all the tools. They set up. They start graffitiing. We videotape it. We arrest them. We throw them in jail. I found out that very few people did graffiti. Once the word got out that Mayor Laffey, there was a 17-year-old kid who graffitied gang signs on stop signs, but he wasn't in a gang. He just thought it was funny. I actually went to his house, knocked on the door, said, "Let me just tell you something. I talked to his mother and father. I'm going to catch you. I'm going to throw you in jail." Nobody graffitis in Cranston, Rhode Island. He stopped. So by the way, once the word got out that no one was putting up with it, Mayor Laffey wasn't putting up with this nonsense, that helps insurance rates when there's less crime, right? So that is one of a myriad of
Do
things.
you know what redlining is?
No, I don't think I do. Do I?
That is a you thing to explain.
What, redlining?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just ask that because it came up at our city council the other day. Last week, the other day. Not really sure. And they were talking about, like, if you're confined to a certain zip code in the city of Flint, your insurance is higher
Oh, right.
than the suburban areas.
Yes.
Not just that. Previously,
Yeah.
because certain areas of the city were locked by, unfortunately, skin color.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It was if you lived in this zip code, you couldn't get a loan.
Yeah.
Or if you did get a loan, it was at egregious rates. We're talking like 24% APR, if not higher.
Yeah.
Something that would put anyone in the dirt. But then when you have other opportunities limited, it put everyone in the dirt.
Yeah. Well, these are really traumatic problems to do with inner cities in many respects, and a lot of it comes from crime where people aren't willing to insure. But it's happening in Denver right now. Denver's the stolen car capital of the United States of America. Rates are going through the roof because the mayor and the city council won't stop it. But how did it start? It started with them allowing people to live on sidewalks in Denver, a beautiful city, by the way, that's been destroyed. It happened in Seattle, Washington, not an inner city, but rates. Portland, Oregon was destroyed, right? So rates there are off the charts. Now, there's a lot of things we can do about things like, and one thing about insurance is building costs and codes to build and all these kind of things. There's a lot of things that go into why insurance rates go up. But you're talking about, I think, when things become almost uninsurable.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And they did
Small
say
businesses
that.
here are uninsurable.
Yeah.
Unless you're coming in with like Walmart money, we'll back that up and say Safeway money.
Well, let me be very clear though. If I was, and I don't know Flint as well, I do tell you this. I even though I'm running for president, I love being the mayor because I interacted with people all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, people said, for example, "Steve, you were the mayor. It was extraordinarily successful. The bond rating went up 8 notches. We had the lowest bond rating in the United States of America, lower than Flint, Michigan when I became mayor. Lower, lowest in America. The only city that was tied with was East Chicago, Indiana. That's that place when you leave Chicago and you drive toward Flint on Route 90.
Yep, I've been there.
Look to your right and see a burnt out place. I mean, that was Cranston, Rhode Island. Now Cranston didn't look like that, but financially was destroyed. So I was in Syracuse, another city that's having problems, a bigger city than Flint, but Syracuse, New York, but a city that lost manufacturing jobs, but has a college, so isn't as bad off. And I'm like, man, if I could be the mayor here, this place would be clean as a whistle in a half a year. We wouldn't put up with this. Flint or other cities need somebody to say, I'm not putting up with this anymore.
Well, we have Eric Mays. Have you heard of him?
No. Eric,
This man, you said you were in your 60s, right, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think he plays around with the tiki-talkies.
Or you too? Wait.
No, is he the guy? Is he the guy that went to jail for?
Yes. He was recently pulled out of a city council meeting for both being disruptive.
I don't know that one. Then I was thinking of the guy who was the mayor of something and went to. But these people. Yeah. The problem in Cranston, the problem in places like Flint many times is that even among the people who run the joint, they're sort of in it together. They represent.
You just got the gold star for the day.
Yeah, they sort of represent. They're not rich, but they represent the inside crowd, so they don't check on the pipe. So they know the pipes are bad. They know the water can't be, but they don't do anything. Here's the problem in a lot of these cities, like Cranston, where I was the mayor. They knew they had destroyed the city over the years. They play a game of musical chairs like they do in Congress, and they just say a prayer. I hope I'm not in office when the whole thing blows up. And so only once in a while does it really blow up. And they're there.
I mean, the odds are in their favor. It probably won't be during my term.
That's what I know these people. And this is why nobody really wants me to catch fire in the presidential race. If everybody heard what I'm saying to you today in depth, most people are like, yeah, I'm not saying rocket science things that like, oh, this highfalutin guy. I'm saying things that everybody sort of knows are true. Inflation comes from too much money, not supply chain or the Ukraine war. The schools are terrible. They can't be fixed. I think most people know this. China's been a giant problem. We shouldn't be trading with them. The jobs have to come home. People know this. Social Security is broke. To say we're not going to touch it means that you, as running for president, or you as congressman or Speaker of the House McCarthy on the Republican side, means that you don't care about the young people. You can't say, I don't care about the young people, but everybody knows that's what it means, except here's the other problem. The real other problem is this, and I knew this from making this movie. You go around the country and you find people that have $100 to help a campaign out. That's all they have. They have $100. They make a certain amount of money, and they read that George Soros on the left has 60 million for a campaign, or the Koch brothers on the right have 70 million. Oh, this really rich guy is going to fund Trump, or this really rich guy is going to do this, and they have $100. And you know what happens? They become they're disconnected.
Right.
They say to themselves, how do I make a difference? And then they don't vote. And then they don't contribute. I think that we should have a system where no other money goes into these campaigns. Now, I'm saying something that every TV news channel doesn't want to hear, because they make most of their money on political ads that nobody even watches anymore, right?
Right.
So I'm saying something, but let's just say we decided as a country, we're not trying to limit free speech. My conservative friends say, Steve, you can't say this. I say it all the time, so I'm going to say it to you. What if we said, all right, every American individual could put $10,000 into any campaign or 100 campaigns, but a total of $10,000 a year? Now, the guy with $100, which is most people, would say, 10 grand's a lot, but okay. Okay, I can make a difference, because that 10 grand's probably going to 10 races for that guy. It's $1,000 each. I got $100. I'm going to help Joe in the city council race. I'm going to help give that money to somebody. Unless we do something like that, people are going to continue to feel like they're alone.
Right.
That's what my movie said. The subtitle of Fixing America, if you type in Fixing America, Steve Laffey, the subtitle of the movie is "You Are Not Alone." There's millions of people out there feeling the same thing. And on
Yeah.
this presidential campaign, I'm just trying to bring them together. I'm not trying to appeal to the special interest or the anti-woke crowd or the Trump people. I'm trying to appeal to the people who actually care about the future, would rather put in a little extra money now to fix the problem if they had to, but know it would be fair.
I think you are. We just got a comment from one of our followers. It says that they said that you sound like one of the few reasonable Republicans that they've ever listened to.
Well, I
So I
appreciate it,
commend you on that. I
and I
do
don't.
want to ask you a quick question though.
Yeah.
While you're talking, you like to talk, and I want you to talk about this.
Yes.
What have you thought about the Black agenda? When we look at cities like Compton, Flint, Michigan, Atlanta, South Side of
Memphis.
Chicago, Memphis, what? How can we fix? We're not making the guns, we're not making the drugs, bring them into our community. Have you had any thought like how can I help Black America?
Yeah, I generally think in terms of all Americans, and I don't really do much on the color. I just don't see the color thing as much as I maybe should or don't. I just don't. But yes, I think that my education program is designed expressly for the Black community that has been totally hosed by the education system that they can't get ahead. I think that my 999 program will help families stay together. And I think that the leader of the country needs to directly go to these places. I mean, if I were president, and you can hold me to this, I'll take a vacation in Flint, not Martha's Vineyard. I don't know why people try to disconnect themselves with what really is happening in the world. I didn't do it in Memphis. I lived in the middle of the city. I lived in a great big home at one point. Great. I made a good amount of money, but I lived
I mean,
right in the,
that's a great stand, but I wouldn't go as far
yeah.
as you don't have vacation.
Yeah, there's nothing to do for you here, boss, unless you want a really heavy lead fish.
Right. We
Yes.
have no clean water. We have blight everywhere.
Yeah.
The streets are horrible. I mean, these are urban issues. This
Yes.
is like what I call the Black agenda. Like they're leaving us to crumble in our own
Yes.
neighborhoods, and not just so much the Black agenda, the poor agenda, the poverty-stricken agenda. Period.
Yeah. Well, and listen, I mean, I could do statistically that the Black family was better off in 1962 than it is today because it was.
It was, and
Because
you are correct.
again, I don't want to lecture to the Black family. I'm a white dude from Cranston, Rhode Island, right? And
I'm asking you the question. I need you to
and
answer.
no, but I think that a combination of bringing back manufacturing jobs, somebody who's president who totally believes in family, do everything we can to encourage families to stay together. I understand some families can't. I myself have been divorced once. I totally get it.
Right.
I'm not. I'm a sinner. I just. It is what it is. I'm not in my family breaking up. That was my wife divorced me. My first wife left me. Took my 5-year-old kid. It was tragic. By the grace of God,
Sorry.
by the grace of God, I got remarried very quickly to a beautiful, beautiful lady. Been married over 28 years. Have 5 more children. And I get along with my first wife very well. But regarding specifically the inner city Black situation, I thought in the 90s it was tragic when I went to the Caldwell inner city school that I just spoke about earlier. And the rumor went around that I was Bill Gates.
Wow.
And the reason it made me feel terrible, I wore big glasses, by the way, back then.
Yeah, I was about to say, you don't look that nerdy, but okay,
Well,
you had glasses.
I wore bigger glasses, but it was because these kids hadn't seen a white dude walking around. I mean, they only knew of Bill Gates. I
Right.
wore a suit and tie and I had big glasses. I don't look anything like Bill Gates, for better or for worse. Maybe for better, I think. But anyway, if he hears this, I'm only joking with Bill Gates. But
I'm not. You much better.
But it was tragedy. It was tragedy that these kids didn't know. So they didn't know enough, and it was tragedy what was happening to the American family, but especially the Black family.
Right.
So listen, I could be a cheerleader for this, but what will really work to make things better for the black family would be manufacturing jobs coming back, people understanding that education is vastly important, a school system where black kids get the same education as white kids, and that'll happen with charter schools. It will not happen if we don't do it. Let me be very front. If we keep kids in public schools, the kids who do the worst are black kids. And they're going to keep doing the worst. And they're going to throw more money at it, and it's going to get worse. And there's going to be more violence.
The charter school teachers, they don't have to be licensed or anything, do they? So
most states actually require you to be licensed.
They do? Okay.
Like where I graduated, Center for Academic Success in Douglas, Arizona, all my teachers were licensed.
Okay.
It was state law.
Okay.
But that also falls on the states. So individual states differ in different ways.
Yeah, they do differ. I was going to say. But what I'm saying, if you look out, I don't have a short-term solution for the inner city problem in Flint, Michigan. But if you look out 10 or 12 years and we can get every kid out of a public school and get a better education, and the one that their mother or their father, or hopefully the mother and their father want, then 10 years from now, things will be better. They won't be perfect.
Right. Because and I feel like we're better than some manufacturing jobs. Let's get our black children.
I
didn't. I wasn't like taking a dig. I know you didn't mean it in a bad way, but I'm like, we're better than manufacturing jobs. We are presidents. We are CEOs. We are Wall Street stock market changers, or whatever they call them. But we need that great education system that we don't have. And I do agree with you. I don't see the public school system here lasting that much longer.
It's hurting. It's hurting kids badly. No,
so if I'm to understand your answer, though,
go ahead.
You were, to put it in simpler terms, what you're saying is financial stability in the home will help strengthen the family, keep the family together, and raise the child. And then following up with raising the child as a family, you want a stronger education for any child of any color, of any place in America, so they can go on to do what they need to do, whether they choose to go into the manufacturing fields or whether they choose to go into business or go be rocket scientists.
Exactly.
It starts with a few small steps. And I'm going to say there is no quick fix to decades and decades of compounding problems.
Right.
And I don't think anyone should be looking at any presidential candidate and saying, I want you to fix the country as soon as I snap my fingers. Because these have been decades-long problems. There is no quick, simple fix.
There isn't.
And it takes steps to get to.
That's right. That's right. And I did not mean to say, listen, when it comes to entertainment and sports and movies, blacks have stood out and done better when they're let them run, let them go, let them be who they can be. And they can be every bit of Harvard and every bit of semiconductor makers. There's no difference between white and black people. There's no difference at all. We couldn't care less. What I'm saying is that these problems are so, as you said, so wrapped up for so many years that it will take time. But it starts with a kid in first grade knowing what every first grader has to know before they go to second grade. That has to happen. I'm going to make it happen. I don't care what I do the rest of my life because I got this chance. The people around me who didn't study around, they didn't go to college.
I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
One more question. Rhode Island. Sandy Hook?
No.
Where's that at? Where was Sandy Hook at? In elementary school. I thought it was Rhode Island.
No. I'll have to look it up later. It is East Coast, but no, I don't think Rhode Island has had thankfully,
thank God,
a major mass shooting.
No.
What do you think about like guns in the school? Teachers carrying guns, teachers protecting themselves, armed security in the school. What?
I think
I'm scared to get to school.
Yeah, I am a concealed weapon carrier.
And you love the NRA, right?
I do not love the NRA.
He's on my side.
No.
Isn't this a weird interview? I'm the black girl that loves the NRA, and we got two conservative white men that don't love the NRA.
No, I don't hate the NRA. I'm just saying the NRA, the guy who ran it, he paid himself too much, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's really the issue.
Yeah.
Right, I know.
I mean, let's not. But
Yeah, but
Trevor said you don't want to talk about that.
no. But,
no, teachers, I feel, listen, I will tell you this very truthfully. When I live in northern Colorado, I head toward Wyoming and I go into a restaurant, I feel way better because a lot more people are around me than in Denver, concealed carry. And I don't see any issues. I'm not worried at all. When I lived in Memphis, and I did not have a gun because I didn't know about guns at the time. I knew, but I was so busy, I didn't do this.
Right.
I knew that around me on the 15th floor, the 21st floor, or whatever floor I was on at Morgan Keegan, the firm had 2,000 employees, that I would guess about 20% of the people around me had a gun on them. I felt better. I felt better. If someone had come in and done something crazy, very experienced people who grew up in the Deep South, who were trained very well about guns and never talked about them. No one ever said I have a gun. I just knew that, I won't say the names, but I just knew that they did. And I felt better. And I think in places that people do this, you have less crime. Who's going to go into a store in Wyoming and pull out a gun in a crowd and not face like 10 people pulling out a gun right at them?
I'll do you one better, right? Who's walking into a police department and trying to do a mass shooting?
Nobody does.
Oftentimes, it is the more armed an area is, the more hardened it is, the less someone's going to look at it.
Yes, at my church, when you pull up in front on Sunday, we rotate. There are 3 people at the front door that you would know just by glancing at them are armed. I watch the left door when I'm not. We have a whole system. So it's highly unlikely that someone says, "Oh, yeah, I'll go there." That ex-army guy is at the front door. I'm going to go take him on. No, they're going to go someplace where no one has a gun.
A gentleman in Texas found out. He tried to go and do some horrible evil, and the gentleman pulled a .38 revolver.
Didn't make it too far.
Quick and easy.
Yeah.
But honestly, sir, I'd like to invite you back. We've been going for an hour and a half, and I still have questions for you.
I know. I'm sorry. I'd love to come.
No, it's fine because you're giving in-depth answers and you're giving us honest conversation. But I'd like to invite you back.
Yeah, let's do it again.
What do you say we reach out to each other after the show and we try to come up with a date for it, and we'll call it part 2?
Yeah. No,
because you're getting a lot of positive feedback from some of our commenters.
Yeah, you might need to just travel to Flint for like a day and do a little town hall here real quick.
I mean,
yeah. Why don't I come to Flint at some point? Haven't been a mayor. I'd love to come to Flint. And
we won't introduce you to our mayor.
No, and you won't be impressed with Flint. You might, but
no, I will feel terrible. Listen. I'm part of my movie. If people watch it, was made in Youngstown, Ohio. It's not exactly Flint, but they lost part of the scenes of my movie are in vacant manufacturing buildings where thousands of people worked. Where my heart breaks for this whole situation because listen.
Entire families were made off the labor in those facilities.
Yes.
Entire generations, and now they're quiet.
Yeah.
We would love
by the way, it's quiet
and give you a tour of our city.
I'd like that. My goal in life, and the reason that I didn't go back after I was very blessed to make enough money to kind of retire in my 30s. I mean, because I helped run a major investment banking firm, and I'm good with numbers. I went to Harvard Business School at 22. All these things, people knew when I was a kid. But I had the opportunity. I lived my life thinking that there's a Stephen P. Laffey out this window, and he's right now in Flint, and he's not going to get to do what I did. Not because he doesn't want to, not because he doesn't want to overcome, because he's in a system that doesn't let him, and he's not going to get to do what I did. He's just not.
You're absolutely right.
And that's the tragedy that I live, and I'm haunted by it. I'm haunted by the thought of this. Is why I'm running for president. I'm haunted by the fact that this is not going to happen in America again, and millions of little Stephen P. Laffeys who come from lower middle class families whose dad didn't go to college and my father didn't want me. I could go on this whole thing. My dad didn't want me to go to college. And yet I persevered because of the people around me. But not everybody has that today. And I didn't have the violence that kids face. I didn't face that kind of violence. Nobody had a gun in Cranston, Rhode Island growing up except for Mr. de Blasio. He was the local cop. I went to school with his son, right? So I'm not saying that's why I'm running. And I think about this all the time. And I appreciate these questions because you're actually real questions. These are real questions. There's no handle. There's actually no, like, I don't have a handler. Someone doesn't say you can't ask those. When you have other people on, they'll say you can't ask about X, Y, or Z many times, right? I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for every question. I'm not, there's only one perfect person who lived on this earth. It's not me. But when it comes to fixing this place financially and putting in systems and putting the right people in the right place at the right time, that's what my gift is. And I have unique talent to be president right now. I am the right person for the times. Otherwise, I wouldn't run. I wouldn't go to New Hampshire again on Monday and live there I'd hang out with my beautiful children and my wife.
We do have one parting question. This one is also crowdsourced. And I have to find it again because it is beautiful. Well, not beautiful, but it is honest. What's the biggest issue with the sitting president, and what makes you different? I mean, other than you're awake. I'm sorry. That was my shot, ladies and gentlemen, not his.
Hey, you better leave Sleep Joe alone.
I have a dislike of the man, but what
Donald,
makes you different?
well, I follow through in everything I say. So sometimes at the end of an interview,
he does too when he remembers.
Sometimes at the end of it of an interview, someone will have said to me, "So what's the first thing you do as president?" I'm like, "Did you not hear? I'm going to fix Social Security. It's at the front." It's so I have this mindset that when I was mayor, I had these legal notepads with me, and I had these check marks. Bond rating is going to go to investment grade. We're going to build a police station, whatever it was. When I checked them all off, I got the people who are my buddies who helped me out. I'd say, "I'm done. I'm not going to be the mayor anymore." They were like, "What?" I said, "We fixed I promised people X, Y, Z, A, B, C. It's all done. What do we do next?" So I have that's who I am. But Donald J. Trump is a beautiful marketer. If you're a conservative, you appreciate his judges. There is absolutely no need for much of the stuff he does and the antics and so forth. There's no need for it. We should pray for Donald Trump because he has this internal problem. He can't say I made a mistake. He can't say I was wrong. He can't do it. And it leads to other problems. Now, is Donald Trump a patriot who loves the country? Yes. Yeah, there's this thing about Russia years ago was like, what are you talking about? I mean, but I'm the only person running who doesn't know him, doesn't consider myself a friend of him, and I know the man. And didn't work for him. The other people are trying to be mini Trump, and that doesn't work, folks. The issues that I have on stevelaffey.com are the ones that Donald Trump cannot debate with me. He won't. That's why they don't want to get me into this thing. He's not going to debate the Federal Reserve with me. I'm the only person. So that's why I put him up there. Because if we happen to meet on the debate stage, I really win. Because I have this long-term thing, and I don't pretend to be who I'm not. Unfortunately, Mr. President Trump, to be respectful, I believe has these internal issues inside that I wish would go away. He's been successful. He doesn't have to tell people how successful he was. He doesn't have to say it over and over again. He doesn't have to say things to CNN that are demonstrably untrue, like oil production was so high we're about to stop paying off our debt. That wasn't true. He just doesn't have to say this stuff. But we can pray.
Kind of reminded me of Ron Paul. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Kill the Fed. All right. Let's, not kill the Fed, but that was his thing.
Yeah.
Or, hey, actual equal taxation brackets, and we haven't gone into it this time. I'm hoping to next time. Let's not go fight any more new wars, which is something he was big on. He was all for immediate withdrawal from Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, but he didn't do it. Remember this.
He never got elected either.
Well, no, when Donald Trump was elected, he said he was going to get out of
Let's talk about Mr. Paul.
And we'll do that next time. We'll do it next time.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
No, but...
Yeah, call me. We'll do it again, and I'll come to Flint. At some point, I'd like to come to Flint.
Hey, you know what? Campaign stop through here. It'd be great to get a positive feel for another Republican around here. I think I'm one of the very few that people actually like. Um,
And that's very true.
it would be very nice to have at least another Republican for people to like as well.
But
Yeah.
we do have a very diverse political audience.
We do.
And that's one of the great things of that. We appreciate you. You must have noticed it. You guys reached out to 18 News Media Group because we really have that political audience. And they're going to share this. They're going to come back and they're going to watch it over and over again. And they're going to be looking for you, Mr. Lappy.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to keep going. We're going to go to every show. We're going to take it everywhere because I really think we're going to break through the way the daily news. You can see at the SteveLaffey.com, they say, is he the breakthrough candidate? I think I am. I'm not listen, there's 10,000 people who be better president than me. They're just not running. What we need is a financial expert who can fix these things and explain to the American people that it's not going to be easy to fix these things for our children, but we have to because we have a great country and we have special problems and we got to work on them and follow through. And that's what I'm going to do. That's what I've always done.
Well, for the third president, if you win, can you please help us get some clean water?
Yes, I will. Yeah, I will. Clean water. I mean, there are basic things happening in some of these cities, basic things that aren't happening. Clean water is one of them.
9 years.
Flint's been hit for 9 years. The original Aaron Brockovich case in California still hasn't been fixed.
Yeah.
We Mississippi recently.
Mississippi.
And then East Palestine, everything just seeped into the ground there. Now their water's affected.
Benton Harbor again.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is a national emergency, and Flint has been living with this for 9 years.
We're living in pure hell here, and we need help. It's no other way to say it.
I know.
The best thing I can say about the water here is that I don't have to exfoliate. It dissolves the top layer of my skin.
And that's sad. I mean, we laugh about it because we gotta laugh to keep on running.
Oh yeah, gallows humor. That's soldier humor.
Yeah.
It's horrific. I'm so sorry.
I'll let Trevor wrap up. Listen, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll do it again. Obviously,
Yes.
I don't know how to sign off, so sign me off.
Well, Trevor signs off here.
Yeah. No, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great honor to have Mr. Stephen Laffey here. He has a wealth of information. He has ideas. If someone has time for Flint, 810 has time for them. That is going to be our policy moving forward. Whether it's a presidential candidate, whether it's someone from the Senate or looking to be in the Senate, the House of Representatives, even our local governments. I will ask tonight, Club Rich will not be on. Miss Ashley's feeling sick, so let's all hope that she gets better soon. And tomorrow, please tune in to Reverend Threlkel. And everyone, please have a great night. And thank you once again, Mr. Laffey.
God bless you all. Talk soon. And I'll come to Flint. We'll do it again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.